Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Bobby Hammz here. I hope you all had a great day and a great holiday weekend. I spent most of my holiday weekend actually at work, which kind of sucked. So I spent a lot of my time away from work watching a couple movies, and I was going to do several different videos for all these movies that I watched. However, that proved to be a ridiculous idea, and so I'm not going to bother doing that. I'll just do all of them here in this one video. And trying to no spoilers attached to anything like this, so we'll just get started with the first one that I watched was the new Midway movie by Roland Emmerich. He is a pretty decent disaster movie director. He made Independence Day with Will Smith back in the mid-90s, which was a great movie, but ever since then he's just been making Independence Day over and over again. Like, there was the Independence Day with Godzilla, with that one, what's that, Matthew Broderick in that movie. He had the Frozen Independence Day from A Day After Tomorrow with Mysterio, actually, Jake Gyllenhaal. The Mayan Independence Day, which was, I think that was 3000 BC or whatever, or 10,000 BC. I forget what that movie was called. No, that was 2012. Oh my goodness, yeah, that was 2012. And the ridiculous limo. Look at that limo move. Oh my goodness. And then there was the Independence Day without Will Smith. That one that put everybody to sleep. So besides Woody Harrelson and Patrick Wilson, I recognized two actors from Man in the High Castle, which I ended up really liking that season 4 of that show. I'll do something for that also, sometime later on. Everyone in the movie did fine, I guess, with the acting. The lines were corny as hell and very expositional. And Ed Skrein, he played, I believe, the villain in the first Deadpool movie. I think I might know him from somewhere else, but I basically recognize him from the Deadpool movie. And he has this crazy ass accent in Midway. I don't know what he was going for or what he was told to go for, but I think it was supposed to be like, I don't know, like a southern Midwestern hokey. I don't get it. I didn't understand what that accent was at all. It sounded really bad, and his enunciation of his words made it stand out all the more, like just terribly. It was like a piercing ear experience. It was not very good at all. It was very distracting. Listening to him talk was very, very distracting. I don't know, whatever it was meant to be, it was very just abysmal. This is just like one of the worst things of the movie. And the thing about the movie is that when it wasn't loud, just like a lot of Roland Emmerich's films, when they aren't loud and filled with like explosions and aerial combat, it's just incredibly boring. The lulls in between the excitement are just way, way down under. See, there's hills and valleys, right? When this thing hits a valley, it just keeps going down and down until it almost reaches the center of the earth. It's so boring, so boring. And I know it's supposed to be about the actual Midway events that happened during World War II, but it's just like the thing is just, what it was? It kept reminding me of Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor movie, and I hated that movie so much. That movie was just one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Was that Michael Bay Pearl Harbor movie, and this Midway came very close to reaching that level. It didn't quite get there because I really liked the aerial combats, the dogfights that they had towards the end when the actual attack on Midway took place. So that was pretty good. So that's what kept it from becoming, Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor. And also there wasn't too much of the forced love triangle thing going on in this movie, so that was also a plus. But the boring parts made it feel a lot longer than it actually was. I think the movie was only around 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, but it felt much longer than that. Y'all already know I can't stand movies that have bad pacing. Bad pacing just ruins any movie for me. I don't care what actor is in it, what actress is in it, who's doing the score, who's directing it. All that stuff just gets thrown out the window if the movie is just paced badly. Even if the story is great, if this has got bad pacing, then I can't pay attention to the story at all. And this was no good. On another plus side though was that I did like the dogfighting, like I said, and there was no forced romantic triangle going on. But the other thing was that the movie was fairly historically accurate. I really like watching a lot of war movies, mainly because as a veteran I like pointing out many of the flaws that movies, let's not say flaws, let's say liberties that Hollywood takes with how uniforms are worn and the customs and courtesies that normal enlisted would follow in relation to like officers. seeing a lot of the things that they do wrong, it just kind of gives me a chuckle, because it's like, well, you can tell which productions are trying and which ones aren't. Like the Michael Bay Transformers definitely do not try well at anything really, but when it comes to like the military ranks and how fast people can gain rank, they definitely don't even bother to pick up a Military Times article to even get a hint of what they're doing. I mean, I kind of noticed it, but it wasn't too distracting. Unlike a friend of mine, when we watched Homeland, Damian Lewis's character on there, Brody, she just could not stand his haircut and the whole thing, and then the way he wore his uniform. Because on Homeland, Brody is, I believe he's a Marine, and she just could not get past just how horrible he looked in his uniform and how messy his haircut was all the time. I could understand it. It's just kind of funny that it kind of prevented her from enjoying the show. But I pick up on stuff like that also, with the military attire. So that's kind of the thing I like about these war movies. But with this Midway thing, I mean, it's whatever. It's not a terribly bad movie, but I wouldn't watch it again. I wouldn't recommend anyone watching it, that's for sure. There was one that was made in 1976 with Charlton Heston and Henry Fonda. And that one, it's a 70s movie, so there's not a lot of CGI effects going on. There are some practical effects going on with the ship battles and some of the dive bombing that takes place. And that movie is a lot more historically accurate as far as the planning that went into the attack on Midway and how the Japanese went about it and how the Americans went about it. But because of that more deliberate approach in that movie has a lot more, I guess, lulls in between the action. Still, though, it's a 70s movie, so, I mean, it's kind of just trying to be accurate and less entertaining, I guess. I don't know. But the one that really stands out is you can either watch that one from 1976, or actually, if you want to check a better version of both, it's Netflix's Greatest Events of World War II in color. Now, that Battle of Midway is on episode 2 of that series, and that one does a way better job at dramatizing the actual drama than Hollywood movies did. It's actually quite insane, because the Netflix documentary, which is only about 50 minutes long, and it does a superior job of just dramatizing the whole event than this Emmerich movie did in 2 hours and 20 something minutes. And moving on to my the other movie that I watched, another one that I watched anyway, was The Irishman. Now you go from like the garbage that was Midway to like the gold pyramid of like shining city, diamond plated. I mean, The Irishman is AAA gold, platinum plus standard. Okay, this is a movie starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Ray Romano, and a couple of other familiar faces that I saw from Boardwalk Empire. And Jesse Plemons is in there from Breaking Bad. So top-notch cast, top-notch producer, top-notch cinematographer. Oh my goodness, cinematography on this is so amazing. But this is Martin Scorsese's 25th, and I would say his best film ever. And I'd actually go so far as to say that it actually is better than Goodfellas. And I think that's his best movie. But I think The Irishman, if it doesn't tie Goodfellas, I'd say it beats Goodfellas. It's that good. Now, it's a story basically of loyalty, violence, and the regret that spans decades from one hitman's life in dealing with Jimmy Hoffa. And it's set against the backdrop of the 1950s and 60s. And it mainly centers on Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance, mafia influence in American politics, and corruption in the legendary Teamsters Union, which is still in operation to this day. They still have Teamsters bus drivers and stuff like that. I think there's a Teamsters Union in Hollywood, actually. They handle catering, I believe. Now, Pacino, he plays Hoffa. And De Niro, he's an Irishman. Frank Sheeran, he's a hitman, basically, what they call someone who paints houses. And Pesci is Russell Buffalino. He's boss of a Pennsylvania crime family. And those three put on a performance that is just, I can't even explain it. It's just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. The stuff that you would see in a normal Scorsese film is all here, but in spades. It's just put up to 100. And it's a spectacular film. It's A+ all around. But you got to consider the source, though, because I am a diehard Scorsese fan, so you may want to take that as maybe a bit of a bias if you so choose. And I remember I spoke about this earlier before when Scorsese was saying how Marvel movies, they're not really movies. They're kind of like, theater, what is it, theme parks or whatever. After you watch The Irishman, there's no way in hell you can see a Marvel movie doing like this. And I know I did differentiate between the main goals of each, Scorsese movie and a MCU movie. I know I did that. It's just after you watch this movie, you can't see like MCU movie becoming anything close to this as far as like realism and just its place in history. Basically, it's just not gonna happen. Now Scorsese did have problems getting this produced by his longtime collaborators at Paramount Studios, so Netflix actually stepped in to pay for it. And because of the de-aging CGI that was used in this thing, I think the cost was something around $250 million for basically a gangster mob movie, which is, I don't really appreciate a lot of these movies that get made these days where everything has to cost over $100 million. I don't understand that myself, because you get something like Joker that costs around 70 to make and it's made over $1 billion, has barely any special effects. It's just based on, the whole movie is carried on its actors and its script and its story. So stuff that's like $250 million, $300 million for like Avengers, Infinity War, stuff like that just seems ridiculous to me. But it is what it is. The technology has its price tag, so it cost $250 million, I think, for this one to make, mainly because of the aging technology, and it looks pretty good for the most part. There was one scene in particular that I noticed. I think Al Pacino was looking in the mirror, and you could tell just by the mirror it was that little wonky. So Netflix supported it, and Netflix allowed theaters to have a 14-day run of exclusive showings, before they put it online. And the theaters weren't happy about that, because they normally get 72 days exclusive runs for movies, for theatrical releases, which is right around 3 months. Yeah, it's about 18 days shorter, shy of 3 months. So with them not having that exclusivity anymore, it's like you get to show a movie for 2 weeks and then you got to take it out of the theater. It kind of defeats the purpose of having it in the theater in the first place, because you can only make so much money back in 2 weeks, because not everyone's going to be like ready to go to the movie, within that first day that it drops. So, it's kind of, and I guess I could see the point from the theater where like in those 14 days that they could have been showing something else on those screens that could have made them more money. So I understand their point of view where they weren't happy about that really short exclusive time. It is 3 hours and 25 minutes long. It's a hell of a long movie. It is very, very long. It doesn't feel like it though, because the story itself is very engrossing. Like I said, I love history. I'm a big history buff. I love things that happened before my time. It's very fascinating to me. So movies like this and war movies, they fascinate me. It's what went wrong, what was going on in the world before I was around in the world. And this movie is very reminiscent of movies from the 50s and 60s, like Ben-Hur, the 10 Commandments, that were so long that they required an intermission halfway through. So it's not made for the mobile ADD Instasham viewer of today. So if you're someone who's constantly on the go, you're going from one place to another, you never actually stay anywhere, you're just going from here, going to there, then this movie is not something for you to watch. You're not going to enjoy it at all, because it's not something you can really watch on a phone or an iPad or a tablet or something like that. It's not only because it's 3 hours and 25 minutes long, but it kind of requires you to watch on a large screen with some decent audio to help support the explosions and the crowd screaming and just a lot of the background noise that happens on the different speakers. So it's paced very well, and the subject matter, like I said, really intrigued me. And it's very, very violent. It's a very, 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 very violent movie, and that's nothing you wouldn't expect from Scorsese. He makes violent movies. I mean, you watch something like, of course, like The Goodfellas, incredibly violent film, and then Wolf of Wall Street's not so much as violent as it is crass. But then what's that movie I'm thinking of? The Departed. That's a very violent movie again, But if you have 3.5 hours to spare, I highly recommend it. It did win the National Board of Review's Best Film of the Year award, I think on Monday of this week or sometime last week. That announcement was made. So it's a very great movie. I can't honor it enough. The next movie I saw was Knives Out. Came out, I believe, on last Friday, I think. It stars Lakeith Stanfield. He's from Atlanta. He's not from Atlanta. Well, he might be from Atlanta, but I saw him first in the show Atlanta, with Danny Glover, and he was also in Sorry to Bother You with. I think he became a horseman in that movie. That movie's so bizarre, and it also stars Daniel Craig, Mr. Bond, and who, by the way, he does a fantastic Southern accent. Contrasting to Ed Skreins' accent, whatever that was supposed to be, Daniel Craig's accent, he's got a spectacular Southern drawl and accent when he speaks. It also stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, Michael Shannon, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, who's also I think she's in the next Bond movie. I believe she's in the next Bond movie as one of the characters. I don't know what her name is yet, but she's in there. I saw her in the trailer for a Bond's No Time to Die trailer today. And then of course Christopher Plummer's in there also, Frank Oz. It's just another bombshell cast, very talented people. And this one is written and directed by Rian Johnson of The Last Jedi infamy. And I didn't know Rian Johnson's work before The Last Jedi, so after I saw The Last Jedi, and I was like, this guy, how did he even score Star Wars in the first place? Because I didn't like The Last Jedi one bit. I didn't hold that against him because I know everyone has their off days. Every project doesn't turn out the way certain visionaries want them to. So I get that. So I didn't go into the movie thinking about that at all. And so Knives Out is made in the same vein as Clue. It's a film about the death of a famous mystery writer, Harlan Thrombey, who is played by Christopher Plummer. His family of suspects, they all come off as very ungrateful people and ingrates, and they all tell Daniel Craig's private investigator, different variations of kind of the same thing, of where they were when Harlan Thrombey wound up dead. And with the added twist that someone anonymously hired Daniel Craig to look into the death because they suspected foul play. And also there's a character in the movie that can't lie without vomiting, which I guess is a real thing. It's called a timifo. I don't know what the actual word is, but it's a thing. It's an actual condition where you cannot lie unless you want to vomit. So if you tell a lie, the person will literally vomit, and there's someone like that in this movie. It's kind of quirky. It's kind of weird. I didn't know that thing existed. So it's a great whodunit mystery that reveals the whodunit quite early in the film, and I was like, well, that's kind of strange. Why would they do that? And so because the thing is, I love mysteries. I'm a huge fan of like TV procedurals with Columbo, Law and Order, Criminal Intent, Poirot, Monk, Elementary, Sherlock. You get the idea. So I love watching mystery shows and where things get revealed through like following clues and all that stuff. So when I saw them in this movie that they revealed who done it, like basically before halfway into the movie, I was like, well, I guess the rest of the movie is going to be focused on Daniel Craig revealing, how finding out that this person actually did it. But then the movie threw me a curveball, and I was like, well, that's cool. Furthermore, the appearance of a certain character confirmed my theory to me, but I still couldn't see how everything wrapped, all together until the very, very end. And that's when the movie really got me at that point, and I had to kind of laugh at myself for like not guessing it sooner. And just the way a certain element from the beginning of the movie comes to play at the end of the movie, it really wraps things up in just like the perfect bow. And I had to laugh at myself. I was like, oh man, I should have caught that. But it was so well done that I didn't feel bad for not knowing it. It just made me feel silly that at how well it was executed, really. So I didn't feel bad about it, because really a mystery movie that you can solve on the first viewing, to me, isn't a very good mystery movie. You can't be able to just look at it the first time around and be like, oh, they're going to do that, they're going to do that, they're going to do that, and then be right, because then that's just a terrible mystery to me. Anyway, so the movie is great, but there are some overt U.S. immigration policy arguments that might turn off some folks, and it's not even done in like a subtext kind of way. It's a straight out just like in your face argument, and that kind of takes away from some of the stuff. Maybe some people might linger on that a little bit too long, and and they might not be able to enjoy the rest of the movie because of that. But hey, them's the breaks. And that in turn, policy argument is used to highlight the double meaning of Knives Out regarding the family and one specific person. Once Harlan's will is read, as they literally go after this person, Knives Out. So it's kind of, oh yeah, I get it. So all in all, it's a wonderful movie, and it's a very good addition to the mystery genre. If you have some time to go to the theater to check it out, go ahead and check that one out. You won't regret it, unless you're hung up on U.S. immigration policy stuff with the current administration. The other movie that I watched was The Report. It was from earlier this year, and it's another one based on true events. This one stars Adam Driver, and he plays some Senate staffer. I don't remember his name. But Annette Bening plays, I believe, Dianne Feinstein of California, while she was on the House Intelligence Committee, I believe. And anyway, the movie is about the CIA's torture program, which was taking place during the Bush-Cheney years after 9/11 happened. And it goes basically over the birth of the program, how it was justified with the CIA, and how the CIA basically lied to the president and to everyone really to hide that they were torturing people. They called it, I think one thing was extraordinary rendition was another thing, but this thing was called enhanced interrogation. They called it enhanced interrogation, and it showed everyone. It kind of highlighted everyone that was involved with the whole thing, from psychologists to the CIA to military contractors and all this thing. And the movie itself was fine as a movie, but I think you'd have to be very interested in like government programs and government processes in order to like get behind it or get excited by it. It's fine. The actual events behind the movie were far more important in real life than they actually show as depicted in the movie. You don't really see the true effects of the torture program after it was basically outlawed and ended by the Obama administration. So you see how the CIA fights to block it from being released to the public, and it kind of shows you some of the processes that get used, but it's not the most what's the word? It's not the most critical movie to watch. It's fine on its own, but I didn't get much out of it. I mean, I followed this stuff when it came out in real life, so I didn't see much new here in the movie itself. But I think the Report has been nominated for some award this award season. I forget what the award was, or it's a nominee for something. I don't know. I don't follow. Like I said in another video, I don't follow awards much. So if you want to see The Report, just out of curiosity as to how the whole enhanced interrogation torture program came to be, and then how it survived and then how it ended, then fine. But it's not going to show you the aftermath of what happened during the program's tenure. The other movie that I watched was The Laundromat, and this is another one based on true events. This one was based on the Panama Papers release from this bank, and well, it's not a bank, it's like this, I guess it was a bank, this let's call it a financial institution in Panama called Merrick Fonseca, who were basically laundering money through shell corporations in a worldwide network. And the movie itself stars Meryl Streep, Antonio Banderas, Gary Oldman, and a bunch of other people. And I think this movie was just going for a Wolf of Wall Street kind of vibe, very entertaining, quirky visuals, but somehow very informative about real events. And it succeeded at one of those three things. The quirky visuals were cool, but the storytelling was very hard to follow, and it wasn't all that entertaining, really. Meryl Streep, her character, I guess she's the main character. It was really hard to tell because Banderas and Oldman kind of broke in a lot, doing like a Deadpool fourth wall breaking thing in order to explain their side of the story, quote unquote. And there's another side story with a black family in California that tried to explain how bearer bonds work when you have someone in the family that owns a corporation or parts of a corporation. And bearer bonds basically means that if you can pass them around, like say I have bearer bonds and I own, however many, I own that corporation. As long as I own those bearer bonds are in my possession, I own that corporation. If I give them to someone else, suddenly that person owns that corporation. If they give it to someone else, suddenly they, and then so forth and so on. So it's like, well, that side story with the black family, it kind of helped explain Barry Bonds, but it didn't seem to tie into anything with the actual story of Meryl Streep or a Banderas and Oldman, which I guess they were supposed to be tied up as, I guess they were supposed to be all gelled into one thing. But the way the movie was presented, it seemed like Meryl Streep was in her own universe, and then Banderas and Oldman were in their own universe, and then the black family was in its own universe, and then somehow everything was supposed to work together, but it didn't work together. It didn't work together at all. Like Midway, the documentary about the Panama Papers, which was called Panama Papers on Epix. I guess that's a channel or a streaming platform or something. But that was much better, because in the Panama Papers documentary, it detailed what reporters around the world went through to bring the story to light, from a anonymous text I believe they got in Germany, at a newspaper in Germany, and the coordinated effort that they went to bring this thing to the public when it did, and some of the consequences that they experienced as a result of making this, this stuff public. But the Laundromat does not do a very good job at that at all. It's like I said, the visual stuff is very good. It's very cool visuals, a lot of bright colors, a lot of smooth transitions and stuff. But the storytelling and everything else is kind of like whatever. So that's it for this video. There's a couple of the movies I'm gonna watch this week. I'm probably gonna do the same thing, because like I said, doing one video for each movie is just gonna be too time consuming. So that's it. Like I said, like and subscribe if you like to like and subscribe to things, and I'll see you in the next video. This is Bobby Hammz signing out. Peace.